Hello, everyone. Welcome to Best English Podcast. I'm Sophia, your host for today, and I am so glad you've decided to spend some time with. Have you ever been in a situation where you're listening to a native English speaker, maybe in a movie, on a TV show, or even in a real-life conversation, and the words seem to fly past you like a high-speed train? You know you've studied the grammar, you know the vocabulary, but when you try to listen, it all just becomes a blur of sound. It can be incredibly frustrating, can it? You might even start to think, will I ever be able to understand this? I want you to know that you are not alone in feeling this way. In fact, almost every single English learner on the planet has felt that exact same frustration. It's a completely normal part of the journey. I remember a time, years ago, when I was living abroad and just starting to feel confident in my English. I was invited to a dinner party with a group of native speakers. I was so excited to finally use my skills in a real social setting. I spent the afternoon thinking about conversation topics, practicing my introductions. But when I arrived, the reality was much more challenging than I had imagined. I sat at the large, noisy table, trying my best to follow the fast-paced, overlapping conversations that bounced back and forth like a tennis match. Someone at the other end of the table told a joke, and the whole table erupted in laughter. Everyone except me. I smiled and nodded, trying to blend in, pretending I understood, but inside I felt completely lost and invisible. I had caught a few words here and there, words I knew, like airport and suitcase, and forgot. But the story, the humor, the connection, it had all escaped me. I went home that night feeling a little defeated, questioning all the progress I thought I had made. That experience, however, became a turning point for me. It made me realize that listening is not a passive skill. It's not just about letting sound enter your ears. It's an active, powerful skill that you can train and develop, just like a muscle. And that is exactly what we are going to do today. This episode is dedicated to transforming you from a passive hearer into an active listener. We're going to explore the secrets behind how native speakers really talk, and I'll give you the tools you need to not only understand them, but to also start speaking more naturally and clearly yourself. So, find a comfortable spot. Maybe grab a cup of tea or coffee, relax, and let's begin this journey to boost your listening power together. By the end of our time today, you'll have a whole new perspective on listening, and you'll be armed with strategies that will make a real difference. Let's start with an idea that might seem a bit strange at first. I want you to stop thinking about English as just a collection of words. Instead, I want you to start thinking about it as music. Yes, music. Every language has its own unique melody, its own rhythm and beat. When you're struggling to understand, it's often because you're trying too hard to catch every single word, every single note, and you're missing the overall tune. Once you learn to hear the music of English, the words will start to fall into place much more easily. This music is made up of 3 key elements: sentence stress, rhythm, and intonation. Let's talk about sentence stress first. In any English sentence, some words are more important than others. We say these important words a little louder, a little longer, and with a slightly higher pitch. These are the stressed words. The less important words are often said quickly and softly. They are unstressed. So, which words are the important ones? Generally, we stress the words that carry the most meaning. These are called content words. Think of them as the key information in the sentence. These include nouns like house, dog, idea, main verbs like run, eat, study, adjectives like beautiful, big, important, and adverbs like quickly, always, carefully. The unstressed words are the function words. These are the grammatical words that connect the content words together. They include articles like a, an, the, prepositions like in, at, on, pronouns like he, she, it, and auxiliary verbs like do, be, have. Let me give you an example. Listen to this simple sentence. The dog is chasing the cat. Which words do you think are the most important for understanding the meaning? It's dog, chasing, and cat. These are the content words. Now listen to how I say the sentence, paying close attention to the rhythm. The dog is chasing the cat. Can you hear that? The stressed words are like the main beats in a song, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. The unstressed words, the and is, are squeezed in between these main beats. This is a fundamental secret of English. Native speakers listen for the stressed words. Our brains are trained to pick out these key pieces of information to understand the general meaning very quickly. If you are trying to give every single word equal importance, you'll get lost and overwhelmed. Let's try a little practice together. I'll say a sentence, and I want you to listen for the stressed words. Then, try to repeat the sentence with the same rhythm. Ready? I want to go to the store. The key words are want, go, and store. The other words, I, to, the, are said very quickly. Let's try it again. I want to go to the store. Good. Here's another one. She bought a new blue car. Can you hear the beats? Bought, new, blue car. These are the words that paint the picture in your mind. All the other words just provide the grammatical frame. Try saying it. She bought a new blue car. This rhythm is everywhere in English. Once you start listening for it, you'll hear it all the time. It's why sometimes a very long sentence can be said in the same amount of time as a much shorter sentence. It's not about the number of words, it's about the number of stressed beats. For example, listen to these two sentences. The cats eat. And the cats will eat. Moi. They both have two stressed words, cats and eat. So they take about the same amount of time to say, even though the second sentence has an extra word. Now, related to this idea of rhythm is something called thought groups. We don't speak in one continuous stream of words. We naturally break our sentences into smaller chunks or phrases. These are thought groups, and we usually have a short pause between them. Each thought group has one main stressed word, which is often the last content word in the chunk. For instance, if I say, although it was raining, we went to the park and had a wonderful time, I don't say it all in one breath. I would naturally pause and break it into thought groups. Listen, although it was raining, we went to the park and had a wonderful time. There are 3 thought groups there, and each one has its own little piece of the melody. Recognizing thought groups is so important for comprehension because it helps you process information in manageable pieces. It also helps avoid confusion. I remember once hearing someone say, I saw a man eating shark, and for a terrifying second, I pictured a man sitting at a table with a fork and knife, eating a shark. But then I realized they paused differently. I saw a man eating shark. The first sentence had the thought groups, I saw a man eating shark. The second correct one was, I saw a man-eating shark. The pause completely changes the meaning. So, as you listen, try to notice not just the stressed words, but also the small pauses that group words together into meaningful ideas. Now, let's talk about the second part of our English music, intonation. Intonation is the way our pitch, the highness or lowness of our voice, goes up and down when we speak. It's like the melody of the song. And believe me, the melody can change the entire meaning of the words. It's how we show emotion, ask questions, and indicate when we're finished speaking. I had a funny experience with this a few years ago. I was working on a project with a colleague named David. One afternoon, he came to my desk and said in a very flat, downward tone, "You finished the report." My immediate reaction was panic. I thought he was accusing me, like I had done something wrong. I started explaining, "Oh yes, I just sent it. Is there a problem?" He looked so confused. He said, "No, I was just asking." I'm impressed you did it so quickly. I realized then that if he had used a rising intonation at the end, "You finished the report?" It would have been a clear question, but his falling intonation made it sound like a statement, and in that context, a slightly accusatory one. This is a perfect example of how powerful intonation is. The same group of words can have completely different meanings depending on the music of your voice. Generally, in English, we use a falling intonation at the end of statements. It signals that we have finished our thought. For example, I live in London. My voice goes down on London. It's a beautiful day. My voice falls on day. This tells the listener, my sentence is complete. For most questions, especially yes-no questions, we use a rising intonation. It's like a musical signal that we are expecting a response. For example, are you coming to the party? My voice goes up on party. Is this your book? My voice rises on book. And for what questions, the ones that start with who, what, where, when, why, or how, we usually use a falling intonation, just like a statement. For example, where do you live? My voice goes down on live. Whoa. What time is it? My voice falls on time. Let's practice this a bit. I'll say a sentence, and you decide if it's a statement or a question based on my intonation. Ready? Nolly. You're working late tonight. Or, did you hear my voice go down at the end? That was a statement. I'm telling you something. Now listen to this. You're working late tonight? Hear the difference? My voice went up. That was a question. I'm asking for confirmation. This is such a crucial part of understanding the nuance of conversation. It's not just what people say, but how they say it. It can show if someone is happy, sad, angry, surprised, or sarcastic. When you listen, pay attention to the melody of the speaker's voice. It will give you so many clues that you might be missing if you only focus on the words. So now we have stress and rhythm, the beat of our song, and intonation, the melody. When you combine these, you start to understand the real flow of spoken English. But there's another layer to this, a secret ingredient that can make understanding native speakers incredibly tricky until you know what to listen for. This is something called connected speech. When we speak naturally and quickly, we don't pronounce each word as a separate, perfect unit. That would sound very robotic. Imagine if I said, "What are you doing?" It sounds completely unnatural. Instead, we link, blend, and even change words. The end of one word flows smoothly into the beginning of the next. This is connected speech, and it is the key to unlocking the mystery of fast, natural English. Let me tell you about a silly mistake I made when I was a student. I was at a friend's house, and her little brother came running into the room, looking very excited. He pointed at the TV and shouted what sounded like, "Wanna watch a cartoon?" I was so confused. Wanna watcha? What was that? A new type of toy? It took me a moment to realize he was saying, "Do you want to watch a cartoon?" The words want to had blended together to become wanna. Watch a had become watcha. This was my first real lesson in connected speech. There are a few common ways that words connect. One of the most frequent is when a word ending in a consonant sound is followed by a word starting with a vowel sound. We link them together as if they were one word. For example, instead of saying an apple with a clear space in between, we say a napple. The N sound from an attaches to the A of apple. Let's try some. Listen and repeat after me, focusing on making the words flow together. Turn it off. It becomes turn it off. Can you feel how your tongue just taps the N and then moves right into the I? Turn it off. How about this one? I need a break. The D from need links with the ea. I need a break. It sounds much more natural, doesn't it? I need a break. Another type of linking happens when a word ends in a vowel sound, and the next word also starts with a vowel sound. To make it easier to say, we often add a small, almost invisible sound in between, either a W sound or a Y sound. This is sometimes called intrusion. For example, with the phrase go away, the word go ends with an O sound and away starts with an A sound. To connect them smoothly, we naturally insert a little W sound. Listen closely. Go away. It's very subtle, but it's there. Go away. Similarly, for a phrase like I agree, we add a tiny Y sound between the I and the A. I agree. I agree. It just helps the sounds flow more smoothly from one vowel to the next. This might seem complicated, but the good news is you don't need to memorize all these rules. The key is to start listening for them. When you listen to a podcast, a song, or a movie, pay attention to how words are connected. You'll start to notice these patterns everywhere. There are two more incredibly common features of connected speech that can cause a lot of confusion. The first is called assimilation. This is when a sound at the end of a word changes to be more like the sound at the beginning of the next word. It's our mouths being lazy and efficient. A classic example is the phrase, did you? If you say it slowly, the D at the end of did and the Y at the beginning of you are distinct. But in fast, natural speech, these two sounds blend together to make a J sound, like in the word juice. So, did you becomes did you. Did you see that? What did you do? Another common one is don't you, which often becomes don't you. The T and the Y combine to make a ch sound, like in cheese. Don't you think so? My friend Maria from Spain used to have a lot of trouble with this. We were in a cafe one day, and the server asked her, "Would you like a coffee?" But it came out sounding like, "Would ya like a coffee?" Maria just stared at him blankly. She understood all the words individually. Would, you, like. But she had never heard them blended together like that. After I explained it to her, it was like a light bulb went on. She started listening for these sound changes, and it dramatically improved her comprehension. The second feature is called elision, which is a fancy word for a disappearing sound. In fast speech, we often drop sounds, especially the T and D sounds, when they are stuck between two other consonant sounds. It takes too much effort to pronounce them. For example, take the phrase next door. Technically, there's a T sound at the end of next, but almost no native speaker says next door. We drop the T and say next door. It's smoother and faster. Listen to these examples and see if you can hear the missing sound. I must go becomes I must go. The T disappears. He's a good boy often sounds like he's a goo boy. The D is very weak or gone completely. Fish and chips becomes fish and chips. The D in and is almost always dropped in casual speech. I once spent a whole train journey completely misunderstanding someone because of elision. He kept talking about his old man. I was trying to figure out what an Olman was. Was it a type of job? A brand? Finally, I realized he was saying old man, referring to his father, but he was dropping the D sound completely. It was a simple thing, but it blocked my understanding entirely until I figured it out. Learning to expect these missing sounds is a huge step toward understanding natural spoken English. So, let's recap what we've covered so far. We have the music of English, the beat of sentence stress, the melody of intonation, and the smooth flow of connected speech, which includes linking, assimilation, and elision. These are the things happening behind the scenes that make spoken English sound the way it does. And now that you are aware of them, you can start listening for them. This brings me to my next big point. Listening is not just about your ears. It's about your brain. Great listeners are like detectives. They don't just hear the sounds. They actively look for clues, make predictions, and use the context to understand the full picture. You do not need to understand 100% of the words to understand 100% of the message. Let me say that again, because it is so important. You do not need to understand every single word. I want you to think about the first time you watched a movie in a foreign language without subtitles. I did this with a French film when I was a teenager. For the first 10 minutes, I was completely lost. My brain was in panic mode, trying to catch every word and failing miserably. I felt like giving up, but then I decided to just relax and watch. I watched the actors' faces, their body language. I listened to the tone of their voices. Were they angry, happy, scared? I looked at the setting. Where were they? What was happening around them? Slowly, a story began to emerge. I didn't understand most of the dialogue, but I understood that the main character was sad because she had lost something important. I understood that another character was trying to help her. By the end of the movie, I had a pretty good idea of the entire plot. I had used context to fill in the gaps left by the words I didn't know. This is a skill you can and should use every single time you listen to English. Always ask yourself, who is speaking? Where are they? What is their relationship? What is the general topic of conversation? Answering these questions creates a mental map that will help you navigate the conversation, even if you miss some of the specific words. Let's try a little exercise. I'm going to describe a scene, and then I'll read a short piece of dialogue. I want you to use the context to figure out what's happening. Ready? Imagine you are standing in a crowded airport. You can hear the sounds of suitcases rolling, announcements over the loudspeaker, and people talking all around you. You see a woman, let's call her Sarah, talking on her phone. She looks worried and is speaking quickly. Listen to what she says. "Hi, it's me." "Listen, I'm at the airport, but the board says the flight is delayed." "I know, I can't believe it. I don't know when it will take off now. I might not make it in time for the meeting. Can you let Mark know? So far, so good. Now, let's continue the story. Sarah hangs up and walks over to the airline information desk. There's a long queue. She finally gets to the front and speaks to the agent. Listen to their conversation. Sarah: Hi, I was just wondering if there's any update on flight BA 249 to New York. The board just says delayed. Agent: Just a moment, madam. Typing sounds. Right. BA 249. We're looking at a technical issue with the aircraft. The engineers are working on it now, but we don't have a firm departure time yet. It's going to be at least a 3-hour delay, I'm afraid. Sarah: 3 hours? Oh no, I'll miss my connection. Is there any chance of getting on another flight? Agent: All the direct flights are fully booked, I'm afraid. I can try to reroute you through Chicago, but you wouldn't get into New York until very late tonight. Now, even if you didn't catch every single word, maybe technical issue or reroute were new, you can understand the situation has gotten worse. The problem is serious, the delay is long, and the easy solutions are not available. You understood this by combining the context, an airport help desk, with the key words you did know and the worried, frustrated tone in Sarah's voice. This is active listening. Another powerful technique that detectives and good listeners use is prediction. As you listen, your brain should always be trying to guess what's coming next. This is something we do automatically in our native language. If someone says, "I'm so hungry, I could eat a," your brain immediately thinks of the word horse. You are predicting what they will say based on the context. You can train yourself to do this in English too. If you are listening to a news report about a new smartphone, you can predict that you will probably hear words like screen, battery, camera, and price. If you are listening to a conversation about a holiday, you can predict words like beach, hotel, flight, and relax. By predicting, you are preparing your brain for the vocabulary it is about to hear. This makes it much easier to recognize the words when they are spoken. It's like warming up before you exercise. Let's think back to my friend Maria in the cafe. The server came to her table. The context is a cafe, a server, and a customer. Maria could have predicted the types of questions she might be asked. What would you like? Are you ready to order? Comma, can I get you something to drink? If she had anticipated these questions, the blended sound of "would ya like a coffee" might have been much easier to decipher. She would have been expecting a question about ordering, and her brain could have matched the strange sound to the expected meaning. So, from now on, when you start a listening activity, take a moment to look at the title, the picture, or the situation. Ask yourself, what is this about? What words do I expect to hear? This simple act of preparation can make a huge difference in your comprehension. Now, I want to combine these ideas and talk about different ways of listening for different purposes. You don't always listen in the same way. Sometimes you just need the main idea. This is called listening for gist. Other times, you need to find a specific piece of information, like a phone number or a name. This is called listening for specific information. And sometimes, you need to understand the speaker's feelings or opinions, which might not be stated directly. This is called listening for inference. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this. A few months ago, my friends and I were trying to plan a surprise birthday party for our friend, Anna. The planning happened over a long and complicated group chat and a few phone calls. It was a perfect test of my listening skills. First, I needed to listen for gist. The first message from our friend Tom was really long. He had all these crazy ideas: renting a boat, hiring a band, a fancy dinner. I didn't need to remember every detail at first. I just needed to get the main idea. So I scanned the message quickly to get the gist. Tom wants to plan a big, expensive party for Anna. That was it. I understood the main point without getting lost in the details. This is what you do when you first listen to a podcast or a news report. You ask yourself, what is the main topic here? Next came the listening for specific information. Our friend Chloe called me. She spoke very fast. She said, "Okay, Sophia, forget Tom's boat idea. It's way too expensive. We've decided to have a picnic in the park. It's going to be at Green Hill Park on Saturday. We need everyone to be there by 2 p.m. to surprise her. And can you please be in charge of bringing the cake? A chocolate one, that's her favorite." Now, my listening style had to change. I wasn't listening for the general idea anymore. I needed specific details. What did I need to listen for? The place: Green Hill Park. The day: Saturday. The time: 2 p.m. And my job: bring a chocolate cake. I focused my attention like a laser beam on these key pieces of information. This is the kind of listening you do when you're at a train station listening for your platform number, or on the phone trying to write down an address. You ignore the extra words and just hunt for the specific data you need. Finally, there was the most subtle kind of listening for inference. This is where it got tricky. To make sure Anna was free, I had to call her sister, Laura, to check Anna's schedule without making Laura suspicious. I called her up. "Hey, Laura, it's Sophia. How are you?" "Sophia? Hi, I'm good. Just really busy with work. What's up?" "Oh, nothing much. I was just calling for a chat. I was thinking it's been ages since a few of us got together. I was wondering what Anna's up to this weekend." There was a short pause. This weekend? I think she mentioned she was keeping it free. She said something about hoping to finally catch up on her reading. "Why do you ask?" Laura's voice was light, but I sensed a little bit of suspicion. "No reason, really. Just thought if she was free, we could maybe grab a coffee," I said, trying to sound as casual as possible. "A coffee? That's nice of you. Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure she's around. She's been a bit down in the dumps lately, so a call from you would probably cheer her up." "Okay, let's analyze that." Laura didn't say, "Don't plan anything. We're already doing a family dinner." She also didn't say, "Oh, please plan something for her." But what can we infer? First, she confirmed Anna is free. Second, she said Anna was down in the dumps, which is an idiom meaning a little sad or depressed. This told me that Anna probably didn't have any exciting plans and would really appreciate a surprise. The slight hesitation in Laura's voice also told me she might suspect something, so I knew I had to be careful. I inferred everything I needed to know, not from the direct words, but from the pauses, the tone, and the idioms. This confirmed our surprise party was a very good idea. These 3 styles of listening, for gist, for specific information, and for inference, are tools in your listening toolbox. An expert listener knows which tool to use for each situation. When you press play on a new piece of audio, ask yourself, what is my goal here? Do I need the main idea, a specific detail, or the hidden meaning? Choosing your goal beforehand will help you focus your attention and listen more effectively. And speaking of effective listening, there's a habit you can build that will accelerate your learning more than almost anything else. It's the habit of noticing new language as you listen. Listening is not just for comprehension. It's one of the best ways to build your vocabulary with natural, authentic phrases, idioms, and expressions. Think about it. When you learn vocabulary from a textbook list, you get the word and its definition. But when you learn a word from listening, you get so much more. You get the word in its natural habitat. You hear how it's pronounced, how it's used in a real sentence, and the context and emotion that go with it. I remember the first time I heard the English idiom, to bite the bullet. I was watching a movie where a character had to do something very difficult that he had been avoiding. His friend told him, "You're just going to have to bite the bullet and do it." I had no idea what that meant. Biting a bullet? It sounded painful and strange. But from the context of the scene, the character's worried face, the difficult task ahead, I inferred that it meant to face a difficult situation with courage. Later, I looked it up to confirm, and I was right. Because I learned that phrase in such a memorable context, I have never forgotten it. It became part of my active vocabulary much faster than if I had just read it on a list. Let me tell you another story about my first week at a new office job. It was a fantastic way to learn a whole new set of vocabulary. On my first day, my manager, a kind woman named Susan, showed me to my desk. She said, "Okay, Sophia, for the first few days, just focus on learning the ropes. Don't worry about contributing much. Just get your feet wet and see how we do things around here. Learn the ropes and get your feet wet." I had never heard those before, but the context was clear. It was my first day, so learning the ropes must mean learning the basic procedures and skills needed for the job, like a sailor learning how to handle the ropes on a ship. And get your feet wet gave me an image of someone stepping carefully into the water for the first time. It obviously meant to start something new slowly and cautiously. Later in the week, Susan gave me my first small project. She said, "I know it's a steep learning curve, but I'm sure you'll hit the ground running." A steep learning curve was easy to understand. It meant I had a lot to learn in a very short time. But hit the ground running? I pictured someone literally jumping from a moving vehicle and starting to run. In the context of the job, I figured it out. She wanted me to start working effectively and with a lot of energy right from the beginning. By the end of that week, I had a notebook full of these new, practical idioms that I heard all around me in the office. This practice of collecting language as you listen will slowly but surely transform your vocabulary from something you learned in a classroom to something that is rich, natural, and authentic. It will also help you start to sound more like a native speaker, because you'll be using the same expressions they do. So, we've talked about the music of English, about being a language detective, about different listening styles, and about collecting new vocabulary. Now, I think it's time to put all of these skills together and practice with a longer story. This is your chance to be a truly active listener. I am going to tell you a story about a young woman named Clara who takes on a big challenge. As I tell the story, I want you to try and notice everything we've discussed. Listen for the sentence stress and rhythm. Pay attention to the intonation in the characters' voices. What are they really feeling? Try to use the context to understand what's happening and listen for any new and interesting phrases. Don't worry if you don't understand every single word. Your goal is to follow the story and enjoy the journey. Ready? Clara stood in front of the old, dusty building, a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. The sign above the door, with its faded, peeling paint, read, "The Nightingale Bookstore." This was it, her new project. Her friends thought she was crazy. An old bookstore? In this day and age, her friend Liam had asked, his voice full of doubt. Everyone buys books online now. It feels like a losing battle, Clara. Clara took a deep breath, the city air thick with the smell of rain and exhaust fumes. Maybe, she said to herself, her voice a quiet whisper. But some battles are worth fighting. She unlocked the heavy wooden door, and it creaked open with a groan of protest, as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. Inside, the air was still and smelled of old paper and forgotten stories. Sunlight struggled to cut through the grime on the large front window, casting long, dusty shadows across mountains of books. They were everywhere, piled on tables, spilling from shelves, and stacked in teetering towers on the floor. It was chaos, a beautiful, overwhelming chaos. For a moment, the sheer scale of the task ahead of her felt crushing. Where do I even begin? She thought. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her grandmother, who had given her the money to buy the store. It simply said, "Remember, my dear, you eat an elephant one bite at a time." Clara smiled. It was her grandmother's favorite saying. It meant that any huge, impossible task can be accomplished if you just break it down into small, manageable steps. "One bite at a time," she repeated out loud, her voice a little stronger this time. The first bite? Cleaning. Did you notice the intonation in Liam's voice when I said his line? It feels like a losing battle, Clara. The falling tone suggests he's stating a fact, that he really believes it's a hopeless situation. And what about the phrase, a losing battle? It's a great idiom meaning a struggle that you are unlikely to win. And her grandmother's advice, "You eat an elephant one bite at a time," is another wonderful idiom for tackling a large project. So, for the next 2 weeks, Clara worked from sunrise to sunset. She sorted, she dusted, she polished. She discovered hidden treasures. A first edition of a famous novel tucked away on a high shelf, a collection of old postcards used as bookmarks, a child's drawing left inside a book of fairy tales. Each discovery felt like a small victory, fueling her determination. She even found an old, leather-bound journal filled with the previous owner's handwriting, detailing his love for the books and the people who read them. It felt like she was getting to know a ghost. One afternoon, while trying to move a particularly heavy bookshelf, she heard a voice from the doorway. "Need a hand with that?" She turned to see a man standing there. He was tall, with kind eyes and a friendly smile. He was holding a small box. "I'm Ben," he said, walking in. "I run the coffee shop next door. I saw you working in here all week and figured you could probably use a pick-me-up." He held out the box, which contained 2 large cups of coffee and some pastries. Clara felt a wave of gratitude. "Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I'm Clara." "I know," he said with a chuckle. "The whole street knows. We've all been placing bets on when you'd finally open." Clara laughed, feeling the tension in her shoulders relax for the first time in days. They talked for a while as they drank their coffee. Ben had grown up in the neighborhood and remembered the bookstore from when he was a child. "It used to be the heart of the community," he said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. Old Mr. Abernathy, the original owner, knew every person who walked through that door. He didn't just sell you a book, he found the right story for you. Just as they were chatting, another shop owner, a stern-looking man named Mr. Harrison from the hardware store across the street, poked his head in the door. "So, the rumors are true. Someone's actually trying to revive this old relic," he said, his voice dripping with skepticism. "Don't get your hopes up, young lady. We've seen 3 different businesses fail in this exact spot. Bad luck." Clara's smile faltered. "Well, I'm hoping to change that." Mr. Harrison just grunted. "You'll need more than hope. You'll need a miracle." And with that, he left. Ben sighed. "Don't mind him. He's a bit of a grump, but he means well, I think." He then paused, looking at Clara thoughtfully. "But he has a point. If you really want to bring this place back to life, you have to do more than just sell books. You have to rebuild the community." Ben's words stuck with Clara long after he and the grumpy Mr. Harrison had left. Rebuild the community. What did that really mean? The bookstore couldn't just be a shop. It had to be a place where people could connect. That night, an idea began to form in her mind. An idea that was a little bit scary and very exciting. It was definitely an outside-the-box kind of idea. A few weeks later, the day of the grand reopening arrived. The Nightingale bookstore was transformed. The windows were sparkling clean, the wooden floors shone, and the books were neatly organized on freshly painted shelves. But there was something more. In the center of the store, instead of more bookshelves, there was a cozy area with comfortable armchairs, small tables, and a bright, colorful rug. In the back corner, there was a small stage with a single microphone. Ben from the coffee shop was her first customer. "Clara, the place looks amazing. You knocked it out of the park," he exclaimed, looking around with a huge smile. "But what's with the stage?" "That's the big idea," Clara said, her heart beating fast. "Tonight, we're having our first ever open mic story night." Let's pause here for a moment. Did you hear that phrase again? Knocked it out of the park. Ben used it to tell Clara she did an excellent job. By hearing it in a new context, it helps solidify the meaning in your mind. Also, notice the connected speech in a phrase like, "What's with the stage?" A native speaker doesn't say what is with. It flows together. What's with the stage? Ben looked intrigued. Story night? You mean people just come up and tell stories? Exactly, Clara confirmed. Personal stories, fictional stories, poems, anything. I thought, if this place is about stories, let's not just have them on the shelves. Let's have them in the air, too. That evening, Clara was a nervous wreck. What if nobody came? What if they came, but nobody was brave enough to go on stage? For the first half hour, her fears seemed to be coming true. A small crowd had gathered, including Ben and even a curious-looking Mr. Harrison peering in from the doorway. They were sipping coffee that Ben had provided, but no one moved towards the stage. The silence was deafening. Just as Clara was about to give up hope, an elderly woman with bright, curious eyes, who had been sitting in the front row, slowly stood up and walked to the microphone. "My name is Eleanor," she said, her voice a little shaky at first. I've lived on this street for 50 years. I remember Mr. Abernathy. I remember when he first opened this shop." She then proceeded to tell a beautiful, funny story about her first date with her late husband, which had happened right in that very bookstore, over a shared book of poetry. She described how nervous she was, how he had dropped his book, and how they both reached for it at the same time, their hands touching. The whole room was captivated. When she finished, there was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a huge round of applause. Her story had broken the ice. After Eleanor, a young man who looked like a university student went up. He read a powerful, rhythmic poem about the feeling of being lonely in a big city, of being a tiny boat in a huge ocean. His words were so full of emotion that you could feel the entire room holding its breath, listening to every syllable. Then, a teenage girl who had been hiding in the corner shyly made her way to the stage. She told a hilarious story about a family road trip gone wrong, involving a flat tire, a grumpy goat, and a disastrous picnic. She was a natural storyteller, using her voice and hands to act out the different parts. The room filled with laughter, breaking the earlier quiet, emotional mood. Even Ben got up and shared a short, sweet memory of his grandfather teaching him how to bake and how the smell of cinnamon still reminded him of his childhood. Clara stood at the back of the store, her heart full to bursting. She looked around at the faces of her neighbors, faces that were smiling, laughing, and sometimes even wiping away a tear. They weren't just customers in a shop. They were a community, sharing a moment, connected by stories. Ben had been right. She wasn't just selling books. She was building a home for stories and for the people who loved them. Even Mr. Harrison had come all the way inside and was standing at the back, a small, almost unnoticeable smile on his face. The Nightingale bookstore was alive again, its heart beating with the rhythm of shared human experience. So, how did you do? Were you able to follow the expanded story of Clara and her bookstore? Did you notice the rhythm of the sentences, the emotion in the characters' voices, the useful idioms like losing battle, one bite at a time, pick me up, tinged with nostalgia, and a nervous wreck? This is the kind of practice that makes all the difference. Not just listening to random sentences, but immersing yourself in a story. It engages your mind and your emotions, which makes the language stick. We have covered a lot of ground today. We started by understanding that English has its own music, a rhythm created by sentence stress and a melody created by intonation. We uncovered the secret of connected speech, learning how native speakers link, change, and even drop sounds to create a smooth, natural flow. We learned to be language detectives, using context and prediction to understand the bigger picture without needing to know every single word. We explored the different tools in our listening toolbox, listening for gist, for specific details, and for inference. And finally, we talked about becoming language collectors, actively noticing and saving new words and phrases in their natural context. The journey to becoming a confident listener is not a short one. It takes time, patience, and a lot of practice. But it is not an impossible journey. Every time you listen, you are getting a little bit better. Every time you notice a new phrase or understand a conversation a little more clearly, you are taking a step forward. Don't be afraid of not understanding everything. The goal is not perfection. The goal is connection and communication. Remember my story at the dinner party? I felt terrible that night because I missed the joke, but now I see it differently. That experience didn't show my failure. It showed me the path forward. It highlighted what I needed to work on. Your moments of confusion are not setbacks. They are signposts, guiding you towards the areas where you can grow. So embrace them. Be curious about what you don't understand. Re-listen to that tricky part of the conversation. Look up that new idiom. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn. So, here is my call to action for you this week. I challenge you to put these ideas into practice in a small, manageable way. Choose a short piece of English audio. It could be a 5-minute clip from a movie you love, a short YouTube video, a song, or another podcast episode. First, listen for the gist. What is the main topic? Then, listen again, and this time focus on the music. Can you hear the stressed words? Can you notice the intonation going up and down? Finally, listen a third time and try to be a language collector. Can you catch one new word or phrase? Just one. Write it down in its full sentence. This small, consistent practice will build a powerful habit. It will train your ear, build your vocabulary, and boost your confidence more than you can imagine. Thank you so much for joining me on Best English Podcast today. It has been a pleasure to share these ideas and stories with you. I hope you feel inspired and equipped to continue on your English learning journey. Remember, you have the power to transform your listening skills. Just keep practicing, stay curious, and enjoy the music of the English language. If you found this episode helpful and want to continue boosting your listening power and speaking more naturally, please make sure to subscribe to our channel. And I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me about your experience with the listening challenge. What did you listen to? What new phrase did you learn? Sharing your journey helps and inspires everyone in our community. Until next time, I'm Sophia. Happy listening.